When it comes to the pandemic, is misinformation a two-way street? Are both sides, if you're going to assume there's just two, of the COVID argument giving information that is misleading? Let's have an objective look at this subject together as adults. Now, just to let you know, I am not an expert, obviously, in anything except I can't think of anything. So don't take my advice on medical matters. I'm not offering advice on medical matters. I have no opinion on how you should handle your medical health. I have no opinion on whether or not you should take certain medical procedures, whether you should avoid certain medical procedures. That is not something I'm interested in or qualified to comment on. I just want to talk about the results of a poll that suggests that most adults think the risk of being hospitalized from coronavirus is disproportionately high. And this New York Times story that said that nearly 900,000 children have been hospitalized with COVID-19 when the correct number was 63,000. Of course, 63,000 is still a big number. And in fact, I'm not suggesting that it's not a significant issue. What is of more importance to me is the idea of misinformation and the disparity between the initially reported number and the actual number subsequently reported. Also, at this time where we're talking about censorship and misinformation more broadly, and the attempts to legitimize censorship as a way to control misinformation, what do we think about that piece of misinformation? Is misinformation only misinformation when it's misinformation that you evaluate or adjudicate to be misinformation? Or is misinformation stuff that ain't true that ends up being broadcast? Question for you there. In an article published by New York Times reporter Apurva Mandavali, Times readers were told that nearly 900,000 children have been hospitalized with COVID-19 since the pandemic began. A correction issued on Thursday notes that the correct number is 63,000 between August 2020 and October 2021, which means Mandavali exaggerated the number of child hospitalizations by 837,000 cases. Now, I just want to jump here to this Gallup poll. In August, Gallup surveyed over 3,000 US adults on their understanding of the likelihood of hospitalization after contracting COVID-19. The results show that most Americans overstate the risk of hospitalization for both groups, meaning vaccinated or unvaccinated groups. 92% overstate the risk that unvaccinated people will be hospitalized, and 62% overstate the risk for vaccinated people. Now, of course, I'm not saying that there are risks or are not risks. I have no opinion on the level of risk. I'm talking about media reporting only. The New York Times reported nearly 900,000 children, when in fact the real number was 63,000. And here we see the results of an admittedly relatively small Gallup poll that suggests that fear is heightened. I don't feel that fear and hysteria, this is my personal opinion, are beneficial traits when trying to evaluate a situation. I believe that we need to remain calm, serene, circumspect, scientific, accurate, open-minded, communicative when dealing with any crisis. Whether you think that's appropriate for this particular crisis or not is your opinion. For me, I'm speaking generally. It's best to be open-minded, to assess information, to be honest and transparent and clear. The article in Yahoo News continues that Mandavali has been a controversial figure at the Times for her ideologically coloured pandemic coverage. In May, she tweeted that someday we will stop talking about the lab leak theory and maybe even admit its racist roots. I always thought the wet market was a much more racist theory because it's like attacking someone's culture rather than potential corporate irresponsibility. Of course, I have no bias about either of those theories. You decide for yourself which one seems more likely. I remember when Jon Stewart said on the TV that the Wuhan lab has the same name as the coronavirus. I remember thinking that that was amusing. But I also remember at the same time thinking that I had no bias towards any particular theories. I remember thinking that. The correction is notable as the nature of the threat the coronavirus poses to children figures heavily in the continued and often partisan debates over vaccine and mask mandates in schools. While Republicans, such as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, maintain that such decisions should be left up to parents, President Joe Biden and American Federation of Teachers head Randy Weingarten have advocated for mandates, insisting that they're necessary to protect students and staff alike. In many states and localities across the country, educators are among the first to have the opportunity to be vaccinated. The Food and Drug Administration is presently considering a proposal to authorise the Pfizer vaccine for children from the ages of 5 to 11 and is expected to meet to discuss the matter on October the 26th. Okay, so there's a lot to consider there, but primarily what I want to raise to the forefront of your mind is the true nature of misinformation. Is misinformation something that only one side are guilty of, or is misinformation an inevitable consequence of having a strong opinion and a strong agenda? Furthermore, on that poll, for both vaccinated and unvaccinated populations, very few adults reported a correct answer for whether or not you'll be hospitalised if you get coronavirus. Only 8% of US adults gave correct answers for the unvaccinated population and 38% for the vaccinated population. Partisanship was a strong predictor of accuracy, but party accuracy varied by whether the respondent was assessing the risk of the vaccinated or unvaccinated populations. The information provided by that poll strongly suggests that people's attitudes towards coronavirus and associated medical procedures is heavily influenced, dominated, controlled even by pre-existing political allegiances to either the Democrat Party or Republican Party. But when you hear how both the Democrat Party and Republican Party behave, for example, in relation to insider trading, have a look at our video on that if you want to. It seems that there's a lot of stock trading going on that's not being correctly declared. Don't you start to think that whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, they don't deserve this kind of allegiance, that we should be, as people tell us, looking at the science, looking at the information, deciding for ourselves, having a better vision of a better world beyond the limitations of these old partisan divisions, whichever side of the argument you're on, you're probably wrong because they're behaving in a way that's corrupt, systemic and detached from your well-being. For unvaccinated hospitalisation risk, 2% of Democrats responded correctly compared with 16% of Republicans. In fact, 41% of Democrats replied that at least 50% of unvaccinated people have been hospitalised due to COVID-19. By contrast, Democrats were more likely to estimate hospitalisation risk for the vaccinated population correctly. Very few respondents thought the risk exceeded 50%, only 2% of Democrats and 7% of Republicans. So there you have it. Whether you're discussing misinformation or medical procedures, it seems that this has become a political issue rather than a medical one. And that is a great pity, really, because politics is merely the process of administrating management and decisions and, hopefully, in a better world, providing a vision that we can all participate in, a vision that relates to us as individuals and as communities, as a culture and as a society, a place that we can all head to together, respecting our variety and our difference and distinction, creating numerous facilities that afford us the ability to live freely as one, together, respecting difference, embracing, acknowledging, loving difference, being fair to one another, creating opportunities for fair, open debate, free from censorship, being responsible about other people's feelings, caring for one another, true, humanitarian, spiritual values, all of these things accessible to all of us, and people that tell you those things are not possible want us to live in a state of conflict and conflagration. Let me know what you think about this issue in the comments below. Give the video a like, pass it around. Let me know how you feel generally about the politicization of many of these issues. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this cheeky little guy. And if you want to enhance your spirituality, please watch this and remember to subscribe to my side channel, Awakening with Russell Brand, where we talk about the spiritual component of these political issues so we don't get continually mired in the complexity of the issues that dominate our cultural space these days. Stay free.